Hey everyone, Jonathan Pulley here with West Coast Weather. Today is October 18th, and we're going to talk about the active stretch of weather coming up. And it is starting right now with a powerful atmospheric river that's moving into Western Washington and Southwest British Columbia. Currently, this is going to be a Category 4 atmospheric river, so rather strong. Thankfully, this is not happening later in the season like November or December, as this could be causing some major flooding issues. Most of the rain looks to be hitting Vancouver Island and the lower mainland up towards near Vancouver, BC, but parts of the Olympic Mountains and the North Cascades of Washington will also get in a bunch of rain. There's also going to be some gusty to strong winds for the northwest interior of Washington, also on the northern Pacific coast up towards Nia Bay. Then we're going to have a late breaking wave or a storm system that forms as it's coming ashore later on Sunday. This will lead to more gusty winds for parts of Western Washington on Sunday. Thankfully, it's not going to have a lot of time over the water or really much time before it hits land, so it's likely not to become a formidable storm, which some late breaking waves can cause infamous windstorms and damage and stuff, but this one won't have a lot of time to strengthen, so it's likely just going to cause some more gusty than maybe localized strong winds on Sunday. Then the stormy weather looks to die down a bit by early next week, but I'm looking at the potential for some more storm systems later next week. Also starting to look out for some fantasy windstorms as well, as it is that time of the year. So without further ado, I hope everybody's enjoying their day, and let's get right into the forecast. Now we're looking at general ridge and trough positions on this morning's EuroPML. You can see British Columbia over here, Washington, Oregon, and California down here. Here's Alaska up here. This is the Gulf of Alaska that we're looking at right now. You can see that we have this line of basically a boundary between the ridge of high pressure to our south and the troughing to our north. This is leading to a column or river per se of moisture that's running directly in the southwest British Columbia right under this gradient. If this was just a little farther south, Washington would be getting the brunt of this with lots of rainfall, but it's mainly hitting southwestern British Columbia. Then this continues and meanders through all the way through Sunday before another low kind of forms on the tail end of this gradient, and that will push that potential for a late breaking wave on Sunday. And then general troughing continues through Monday, but most of the rainfall looks to end by around Sunday evening or so. And then if I go back to there and don't skip 10 days out, we can see that some ridging builds in over on Tuesday and the Wednesday. But generally, models were showing that really building into a big ridge of high pressure and bringing us some nice weather. Now models are starting to dissipate it and bringing this cutoff low right up the coast. And this is, I'm keeping a really close eye on this, as this is only just past a week out. So we're looking at very early next weekend. And if we look at the pressure on this, look at how that's a 979 millibar low right off of the Vancouver Island coastline. If this inches any closer to Washington, we could be dealing with a major windstorm. It's only been showing this for a few models, but I'm keeping a close eye on it, as other models are also hinting at this solution. As we play that out even past next weekend, this is all fantasy land, but the European model is continuing more storms and troughing, so we basically got a whole storm train incoming over the next 7 to 10 days or so, maybe even longer than that. Now looking at the atmospheric river forecast, you can see that models are showing a likely Category 4 atmospheric river, which at this scale goes levels 1 through 5. This was generated, this format of atmospheric river scale was created in 2019 and is now being accepted by most people. It ranges from a weak atmospheric river to an exceptional atmospheric river, and this is a strong Category 4, so generally a low-end Cat 4 atmospheric river, but you can see it's based off how much IVT or integrated vapor transport. It's just a measurement of how much moisture is in there. So higher the moisture, higher the precipitation rates and more rainfall. But also the x-axis is based off duration. So our atmospheric river is going to be lasting for just over 2 days, so 48 hours, and it's going to have an IVT of over 750. So that puts it into the strong Cat 4 box. But if we start getting any higher than this, we can start, it starts becoming less beneficial and more damaging, especially as we get later into the fall and winter. Like, let's say we get a bunch of rain during November and we get a Cat 5 AR in January. That's going to cause a lot more flooding issues, as our ground's going to be very saturated from the previous months, and so on. We always hope that doesn't happen, but years past we have had some atmospheric rivers like that cause some pretty severe flooding damage along some of those river banks. But now looking at the 6-hour precipitation type in inches on the European model, blue snow, pink is ice up in the mountains, and green is rain. You can see our atmospheric river. We just play this out over the next couple of days. You can just see the constant precipitation, and then even a convergence zone continuing all the way in the late Monday for the Puget Sound. But the majority of the atmospheric river looks to end by Sunday evening. And you can see, look at this, it's this little low pressure system starts forming on this gradient. It's basically this long temperature gradient between the ridge and the troughing, and some of this energy gets pinched off and it forms this low pressure system. If this had maybe 12 hours or more over before hitting land, we could be potentially dealing with a pretty major storm system, but we are not. Thankfully for those that do not like storms. But one of these days we're probably gonna get a storm like that, and we're gonna have to really watch out for that. And we haven't had one for quite some time, at least since I have been looking at the weather the last few years. But this will bring some pretty gusty ones, maybe some gusts up towards 50 miles per hour on Sunday for parts of the northwest interior, especially around Island County up towards Bellingham, also on the northern coastline as well. But I'll look closer at that later. Now, for those on the BC side of things, here's total precipitation in millimeters. So now this is looking at the national blend and also an average of multiple different model systems. So it kind of gives us a good idea. You can see that the North Shore coastal range is going to be picking up around anywhere from 100 to probably up towards 250 millimeters of rainfall. That is a lot of rain, and we're going to thankfully not be dealing with too much flooding issues because it is early in the season and we don't really have much of a snowpack in the melt either. But you can see also Vancouver Island getting anywhere from 100 to potentially over 350 millimeters of rainfall, especially on these southern ranges down here along the Strait one. If you get that is a lot of rainfall. There's probably gonna be some landslides and potential for some isolated major flooding for those areas. Thankfully, there's not a ton of people living out there, but for those living out there, please be cautious over the next couple of days, especially if you have to go out. Now looking at the high resolution Canadian model, this is the HRDPS. And look at this, it's showing over up towards 700 millimeters of rainfall, basically like 400 the 700 millimeters of rainfall in the southern coastal range of Vancouver, and that is a ton of rain. I don't know if it's going to actually reach that much, but this high resolution model, which tends to be rather okay with its predictions, so that would definitely, that's over 2 feet of rain for those not using or familiar with metric. And it even shows some of the the north coastal range even picking up anywhere from 300 to 400 millimeters of rainfall in some of those highest peaks. Vancouver Island, it says towards 200 millimeters, but there's a really sharp gradient where that rainfall really rings out on the mountains. So it's likely going to be less than that. I would expect maybe anywhere from 50 to maybe 100 millimeters of rainfall for the Vancouver Island, the Vancouver metropolitan area. East of Vancouver Island, you can see a lot of rain showering over the strait with maybe anywhere from 40 to 70 millimeters of rainfall potentially for that area. Now looking at some wind gusts up there as well. This is in kilometers per hour, and you can see as the front starts moving into the BC coast later this morning in the early afternoon. This is basically when I'm doing the video right now when it will be uploaded. You can see some wind gusts anywhere from 70 to 100 kilometers per hour on the coastlines of Vancouver Island. Some pretty strong winds up there. Generally, most of these winds should remain along the Strait of Georgia in the northern inland waters of northwest Washington and the Gulf Islands as well. But some gusts up towards maybe 40 to 60 kilometers per hour, especially on the exposed beaches, will be possible. Maybe some isolated power outages with that. Not looking like any major wind event, but you can see down towards Island County, they're starting to get up towards over 80 kilometers per hour. So definitely some power outages down there. Now going to the onto the US side of things. This is a national blend of models that I showed earlier a few seconds ago. You can see generally it's showing maybe a half an inch of rainfall to maybe 2 to 3 inches of rainfall for some of the lowlands all the way up to Bellingham. Generally, most of the northern Puget Sound, southern Salish Sea area is going to be picking up generally lighter amounts as that atmospheric river is kind of moving west to eastward, maybe more in west, southwest to northeastward, and this is leading to subsidence or drying air that comes down the leeward side of the Olympic Mountains, and this dries out the Puget Sound. And you can see that even more significantly over in the Columbia Basin, with some places over there potentially only picking up 1/100th of an inch, so hardly a drop of rainfall. But you can see picks up again as more some more of that moisture gets wrung out in the Rocky Mountains of northern Idaho. But you can see all the way down the northern the California-Oregon border might pick up towards a half an inch to an inch of rainfall depending on where you're located down in there. Now looking at the NAM 3 cam, this is a high resolution model that I show occasionally, and it kind of tends to do over the rain amounts a bit, but it's generally good at picking up those rain shadow locations. And you can see, especially where Sequim is on the Northern Olympic Peninsula, there's a lot of people that like to retire there because it's basically like the banana belt of Washington State. They get a lot of dry descending air from the Olympics throughout the year, and so they get a lot less rainfall compared to other locations. But you can see it's hardly even showing a couple tenths of an inch for even the Seattle area. We might pick up more than this, but generally the mountain locations will be picking up the most, with up to half a foot of rainfall potentially in the Northern Cascades and the Olympic Mountains through the weekend. Now taking a really close look at things, this is where most of the strong wind is occurring. This is focused on Western Washington. Here's Whidbey Island. Here's the Seattle, Tacoma metro areas. Here's the San Juan Islands up here. Bellingham is right up here. Here's the coastline and some of the coastal communities over here. Now let's play this out. This is about noon. You can see the winds are really start to pick up around when this video is going to be uploaded. You can see, but by around 6 p.m. I would say is probably going to be the peak winds, and you can see them even approaching 60 miles per hour for Bellingham. The HRRR tends to overdo wind speeds for some areas, but I have seen it also get it right occasionally for Bellingham. So definitely some power outages would be occurring up there with 60 mile per hour wind gusts. You can see would be potentially getting up to 55 miles per hour as well on this model. Most of it starts to calm down as we go through the evening, but it's going to still remain gusty with gusts over 30 to 40 miles per hour for most of the area through tonight. As we go into Saturday morning, another burst of wind potentially getting up to 50 mile per hour wind gusts all the way up to Bellingham, and even starting to encroach on the Fraser River Valley. I don't know if it'll reach that far up as they're a bit more protected up there, but this model does show that. You can see why Hurricane Ridge is called Hurricane Ridge, because it's getting up just a pretty regular frontal system for the Pacific Northwest, and it's getting up towards over 60 miles per hour, which is only about 10 miles per hour away from hurricane force wind gusts. So no wonder why that got its name up there. But as we go through around 9, 10, 11 a.m., the wind should peak on Saturday around close to lunchtime with maybe some gusts over 50. Before everything mostly dies down, though, winds will remain a little bit breezy on the southern end of Whidbey Island towards Everett and the Kitsap Peninsula. Now look at the NAM 3 cam. This is also another model that I like to look at for wind speeds. You can see it's a bit more moderate around 4 to 5, 6 p.m. when I expect the strongest winds, but it's still showing maybe a period of wind gusts over 55 miles per hour along that Bay area. You can see some wind gusts over 70 miles per hour up towards Hurricane Ridge over there, but you can see Whidbey Island getting over 50 miles per hour, potentially maybe getting close to 55 miles per hour. I've seen this model underdo wind speeds and overdo wind speeds, so I tend to favor it being a little on the low side for the Whidbey Island area, so I'm expecting wind gusts to get at least to 55 miles per hour. I wouldn't be completely surprised if we get a 60 mile per hour wind gust at NAS Whidbey later today. And then you can see the rest of the Puget Sound, they're starting to get up towards 40 miles per hour, which 40 miles per hour for the interior Puget Sound is quite a lot of wind. So definitely as it's early season, I'm expecting there to be a good bit of power outages down there. You can see as we go through Wednesday, another burst of wind, just like on the HRRR model. You can see maybe a little splash of gusts towards 50 miles per hour over Whidbey on Saturday before it starts to calm down. The NAM doesn't calm things down as much, but still reduces it down to around 35 mile per hour wind gusts overnight in the Sunday before. But look at as that little the late breaking wave low that we were talking about earlier, it shows more gusts getting up potentially towards 45, maybe a little higher than that tomorrow, even up towards 50, up towards Bellingham again. So we might be dealing with another similar condition on Sunday, just not as long lasting. And then look at it behind that system, a westerly surge looks to move in. Models forecast these have a lot of trouble predicting these westerly wind surges, and typically with the frontal systems they overdo it. But some gusts over 30, maybe up towards close to 40 miles per hour is potentially coming down the straight one if you get later on Sunday. But generally, most of the strongest winds should be done by then. Now looking at a nice graph from the National Weather Service of Spokane, Washington, a wet mountain weekend. You can see that they're highlighting mainly the mountains because the rain shadowing is going to be really not causing a very little rainfall for parts of the Columbia Basin. And you can see snow levels above 8,000 feet, which is typical for atmospheric rivers, as their moisture, the moisture comes in that is usually rather warm. Plan for the conditions of the mountain and pack appropriate gear. Good graphics from National Weather Service Spokane. Very frequently, they have very nice graphic designers over there. Now looking at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, this is October 23rd through the 27th. You can see that they're favoring below average temperatures even through the end of October. This is getting close to Halloween as well. Generally above average temperatures for much of the rest of the U.S. as we saw storm systems look to continue clipping the Pacific Northwest all the way through late October. Precipitation probability, very not surprising. Above average precipitation is generally favored to at least near normal. Near normal is still pretty wet this time of the year, so nothing surprising there. 8 to 14 day temperature outlook. This is for the 25th through the 31st, which is Halloween. This is almost the same as the other graphic. Precipitation also the same. We're gonna have to keep an eye on this extended forecast as some fantasy windstorms are starting to show up, but as always, those are fantasy and usually likely not to happen as extreme as they're showing, but they can very rarely happen. So I'll be keeping an eye on that, and I'll update everybody when the details become more clear on that. Well, that's it for this video, everybody. I hope everybody found this enjoyable and informative. We have this atmospheric river that's going to be moving through a Sunday evening, brings those gusty winds to parts of the northwest interior and parts of the coastlines. Also that heavy rainfall, the potential for some urban flooding issues up in southwest British Columbia, potentially even some places in western Washington, but it should be rather localized. Weather calms down for a bit early next week before more weather systems look to enter the region, and I'll be doing another forecast video likely early next week, maybe Monday or Tuesday, depending on my free time, getting more details on that potential for a fantasy windstorm. But as always, I'll just continue to keep a lookout for that, and we'll let everybody know in the next video. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Stay safe, take care, and may God bless.